Hey guys, vegan cyclists. Today we're going to talk about how much you should train in the week, how often you should train, how much you should do structured training like intervals or endurance rides or racing or that sort of stuff. I also talked to a bunch of local racers on about how often they train, how often they do structured training. So I have another video kind of more about structured training and form and that sort of thing. So if you want to dive more in depth on that, check out this video. But basically, so before we start, what is structured training? What is training? Because it's not just going out and riding your bike. Having a structured plan or a program is phenomenal. It will give every pedal that you make some sort of purpose, and it will really make sure that when you go out and ride and you're doing workouts that they're for a reason, so that you can maybe gauge a level of progression, or that you can actually make progress versus just some sort of plateau. This is done through intervals, high intensity intervals, but also done just through planning and structuring your rest days and your endurance rides and that sort of thing to understand and know when the proper time to do those type of workouts or rides are. Your local coffee ride or just spin to the grocery store can also exist inside of a structured program. It's not just about intervals, it's about knowing when to take the easy rides easy and the hard rides hard. Look, before we get into this, the answer to how much time you should train on the bike is how much time you're willing to put into it. Most likely, you're not going to be a grand tour rider. This is a hobby, maybe a very serious hobby. It could be a huge part of your life. There is more to life than cycling. And so training 20 or 30 hours a week, you know, if that's what's really important to you and you don't have a whole lot of other things going on, maybe you're in school or you're still living with your parents or whatever, and there's just not a whole lot of other things tackling your time, man, then sweet, crush that 20 or 30 hours. But just be a little bit careful on diluting your experience of life in favor of just cycling all the time. Okay, with that out of the way, I would love to train 15 hours a week. That would be like my main goal. I would love to do that. I often fall short of that, and typically for me, a week is gonna be ranging anywhere between 6 hours, which is not a good week, but a busy week in other life things, and 12 to 13 hours. That's kind of the high-end spectrum for me in my life. But the answer to the question of how many hours should you train in the week kind of depends on where you are at with your fitness, your life, and all these other things. But basically, you know, 6 to 12 hours is a pretty good rule of thumb, somewhere within there. And if you're doing a structured program, you know, you're going to be able to get a lot more out of that time. Now, I totally understand and I get that if you don't have that many hours to train, you know, it's difficult. But even if you're only able to put in, say, 6 hours in the week, trying to get maybe 1 week where you go out and do 12 to 15 hours, even if that's just like twice or 3 times in the year, you know, you're gonna wanna try to at least sometime get out there in a week and crush it. Do back-to-back big long rides, get in 2 to 3 different interval sessions in the week. Those will make you grow as a cyclist big time. But here's a good example of a short week and a long week for me, and usually how I work in my workouts. Now, if I don't do a lot of hours, the intensity is usually the same for both. As in, if I only ride 6 hours in the week, my intervals, I'm gonna do my intervals. The intervals that I've set out, my plan has prescribed me to do, I'm gonna knock those out. Maybe it's just those intervals though. Maybe I don't do much of a warm-up or a cool-down, or I don't do any endurance rides, but I'm definitely gonna hit those intervals when I can. On an example of a long week, I'm going to maybe ride an hour before the intervals or an hour after the intervals. Something similar to this epic training ride that I did. And I'm telling you, on the weeks that I do 13 hours, I feel phenomenal. I'll go to the race and I feel like I'm moving forward. I never really feel that everyone is going way faster than me and that I'm just barely trying to hang on. You know, those 10 to 13 hour weeks, I definitely feel they pay great dividends. But sometimes you just, today, Sunday, I had a 2-hour ride planned. I would have felt great to do it. I wanted to do it, but my son said, hey, let's go ride motorcycles. I'm not gonna tell him no. Like that's a more important thing to me in my life on this Sunday is to go spend time with my son on motos. So, you know, I'm gonna sacrifice that ride. So for me, I'm shooting for 8 to 12 hours in the week. What are the other guys doing?
As a Cat 2, as an elite racer, how often do you feel like you need to do structured training in the week, intervals, workouts, to maintain your fitness?
Every day, except for like maybe one off day. Yeah, I'll have like endurance day, or like, I mean, in terms of structure, it's like maybe go have fun on your bike for 90 minutes, go like do a gravel climb, but it's not really like go do these intervals, but it's definitely like a set plan.
Depends on what time of the year, but you know, if you're doing a lot of intensity, you could do like 18, 20, be pretty good. Base season, people can do all kinds of crazy hours, 30-hour training weeks. I probably do like 25.
I try and do it in blocks, so I try and do maybe 2 days back to back with intervals, and then a day break, maybe a recovery ride, something light, and then maybe another interval day, you know, maybe an endurance ride after. I try not to do, like, I don't try and stack like 3 hard interval sessions on top of each other, because you need time. You gotta like let your legs rest. That way you get the benefit from the hard efforts. So I kind of go in like month blocks, and so I might do like 3 weeks where I'm slowly building my hours with like relatively high intensity. So I might go 16 hours, 18, 20, and then I'll do like a 12-hour kind of, I guess, almost like rest / setup week, where I rest the first half of the week and then try and get just a couple little snappy, easy, short rides, but with a little bit of effort to get the legs going.
How much shit do you get for that man bun?
Quite a lot, especially from the girlfriend. So for me, it's a little different than these guys. I work full time, and my training is my commute to work, and the hard efforts are on the weekends, and we have a weekly training crit every Tuesday. So really that's where I get my intervals in. So it's not quite as structured as, you know, going out and doing these set intervals.
I pick target races, and then I start thinking about what specific physiological adaptations I need for those, and start training for that, maybe, you know, depending on the event, usually like 5 weeks out.
When you're like blowing the field apart, how many hours a week does that take?
12, 10. I used to train a lot more and I wasn't faster.
Okay.
So now I'm like, I know I'm giving myself more recovery. I'm like not pushing it when I feel good in training. I'm like, okay, I'm where I'm at. Let's save it for the event.
What kind of advice would you give them to structure their week if they only have, say, like 5 hours?
That's a good question. I think they need at least one ride where they're doing a couple hours, you know. 5 hours is hard to work with, but, you know, let's say a 2-hour ride one day, and then, you know, even if it's only 45 minutes, go and like hammer up the local hill a couple times on your lunch break. You know, you can squeeze that time in. It's not, you know, 10 hours doesn't feel like a lot. 10 to 12, I got a full-time job. You know, 10, 12 doesn't feel like that much. It's a couple days on the weekends and 3 days during the week, you know, maybe a lunch ride or something. So it's totally doable.
To a guy who only has, say, 6 hours in the week to train, any tips for him? Like, should you only do intensity? Should you get in some endurance?
Intervals, just like super punchy, hard threshold intervals, and just like be super disciplined. So like when you ride your bike, just do the intervals, and then I don't know, skip the easy spin. That's about all I could recommend. Like just intervals throughout the week, easy spin the day before a race, and go out and do it.
So for you wanting to get the most out of your time so that you can also still have a life and not just be a pro cyclist that doesn't get paid for it, I don't know, shoot for 12, 10, 8, somewhere around there. And if you can only do 4 hours in the week, I mean, don't stress too hard about it, but try to plan 1 week every so often where you get out there and you just crush it, because that will pay off big time for you. Let me know, how many hours do you train in the week? What do you think? What's your program like? What's your structured program like? Guys, Vegan Cyclist, yeah.